Hello. I see the assassins have failed. It's Monday, May 22nd of 2023, I think. And here it is perhaps 4:56 a.m. I have been driving since about 2 a.m. from Las Vegas towards that town in Oklahoma where I'm from. And I'm on my way back from ANACHINO23 / Estuary Chino. I don't know, did they put the 23? Estuary Chino with Pastor Paul Van de Clay, John Barecki, and Jonathan Pageau. With a delightful appearance on stage by Griswold. ANACHINO23 started on Wednesday because it was the lodging, quote, event for the Estuary Chino Conference in Chino, California, just off of Euclid. ANACHINO23 was held at Pareto National Park, and Grimgris counted first there. I want to say Isaac got there before Brandon. And Isaac is the Spoon Man from Ohio. He was part of Signs and Wonders, but we had him on the snare for those slow songs. Brandon is Chicago Cigar Brandon, for reasons only he can explain to you. But those were the first two gentlemen I encountered, and as the number of people increased, my ability to recall their names decreased, but I don't think that surprises anybody. It was a truly delightful event. There was the Boy Scouts had not set up the tents when we had arrived, and since it was a skew day, when they did get set up, it was still not by the Boy Scouts, but there were extra tents and bigger tents than we expected, and that was great. Now, I personally, especially, so the first major event of Estuary Chino 23 was the Paintball for Jesus event, and now officially Paintball for Jesus is meant to be a league of competitive paintball played between denominations of various Jesus-loving religions. Although I'm sure that as the league progresses, other teams should be allowed to compete. I mean, of course, the Jesus team should win, what with God on their side. But everybody should be able to play. And the notion is that the video games are spiritual opium, like the Chinese tell us. And while they've reduced their citizens, children's at least, uses 3 hours a day, here in America, we love the freedoms. So we let our kids play video games like 80 hours a day, or a week, or 90 hours a week, maybe 120 hours a week. And that's probably not good, what with it being reciprocally narrowing spiritual opium. And so my notion is, since the physicality of paintball, it puts you in your body, and it is still more thrilling, perhaps, particularly with the pain, than midget games. That might be a way to help revivify the churches and get some urban combat trained Jesus-loving people for when things get really hairy. And I think I like the paintballs because we're probably going to have to mess with drones, and the paintballs are likely to gummy up their sensors and stuff. And so about 60 people got on a bus at Cross Point Church in Chino, California, and rode out to SC Village, Paintball Palace, or whatever they call it. And so since there was so many of us, we were split into two of the teams, two groups. Although the final match was a massive match between all three groups. My first group, I was delighted to discover how terribly out of shape I was, and this is disturbing. But it was a lot of fun, and I don't think I know I shot at people, but the way paintball guns work, especially when they're reduced down to like the pressure of 3, so they don't cause serious harm. They don't necessarily go exact. Like, you can point the gun in the exact same spot and gently squeeze the trigger without moving the gun at all, and those rounds will land in almost certainly 2 different spots, thanks to the nature of paintball ballistics. Hey, Bert. But everyone had a lot of fun, and we went all stinky and sweaty to Graziano's Pizzas, where, oh my goodness, like, people who had not played paintball joined us, and that place was packed and crowded. There was a nice young lady, and Karen and Sevilla, and they were all, and Justin, they were all sitting at the end of the table, and everybody kept confusing that poor girl with Karen's daughter, because Karen talks about her daughter enough, and anyway, that wasn't her, but she looked like a nice lady. I think her and Karen had similar cheeks, and they smiled. And then from there, we returned to the campground on Thursday evening for a quite pleasant time. However, it wasn't until the speeches during the Estuary Chino event on Friday that focused on the power of the campfire that really accentuated what we were doing at ANACHINO. And the Friday night conversations were intense. We were probably up until 2 or so in the morning. And as is with camping, at least in Prado, you're going to wake up around 6. A matter of light, sound, it's pretty consistent. And so there may have been more sleepy eyes in the Estuary Chino event than would have occurred had there not been an ANACHINO23. However, I believe everyone who stayed with us at the campsite, as well as those who visited, for the impeccable conversations that went on there, were thoroughly pleased. Highlight of day 2 of the Friday day was probably the forced estuary stuff in the front that let us bind to people who weren't also camping with us, and that was pleasant. That was pleasant. John Van Donk was the first tearjerker speech for me on that Friday, and then Mervegues was pretty good of a home run, as I recall. I'm sure the videos will be made available for you soon. And Saturday was a wonderful day because that was the day we got to ask questions. And while I had an excellent question for John about synchrony, let me drift back to Friday for a second. That speech of John's I really liked was was it Pajot who talked about the graspiness? Yeah, he's a grasper. It was probably him. But like the way that grasping becomes idolatry was sort of the gist of his the importance of disappointment presentation he made, which I thought he was just not going to be there. He dodged paintball, I think, because he didn't want me to shoot him, but so that his speech was called "The Importance of Disappointment" made me think he might not even give it at all. But it seemed to be about grasping and how grasping becomes idolatry. And it occurred to me that one of the things we are programmed by the mind control to grasp harder than anything else is the concept of our narrative self, which, as we know, is limited to what is constructed in our consciousness that represents ourselves, and is not our complete physical and or emotional and or spiritual embodiment self, but just our conscious self. And I think the idolatry of grasping at that is something that we could learn a lot from if we were brave enough to face it. Right. And then, if I recall correctly, John's presentation, not Van Donk's, but the other fellas, the Reiki guys, his presentation was along the lines of, like how, I think to me, the main takeaway was that culturally, what's happening is the same small world network formation that happens in the mind when it comes back online from being in amnesia. And so I had this really great question for John when it was our chance to ask him on Saturdays about this. Now, that may have been resulting, the cultural and the synchrony and the small world network connections I made may have actually been from the conversation between Pastor Paul and Reiki or something. However, the important point to remember, embody, is that, okay, so the deal with the small world networking is imagine an hourglass, except there's no hourglass, it's just sand falling through the top of an hourglass. And as it piles up, it gets to a certain size of pile, and then it becomes critically too big, and then it starts making smaller piles. And but those smaller piles will eventually build up to a certain base level, and then the main sand pile comes back online as the main sand pile. And this is the way, this is the synchrony, is when all the small networks come back together to form the big one again. And I believe that this is happening as to our monoculture that's been established through the success of capitalism over communism, as far as they tell us. And so as such, we've grown into the capitalist monoculture, which is now collapsing and decaying into small world networks of subcultures, discordant subcultures. And so I had this really great question for John about how, if that's the case, then culture, what we're looking for is cultural synchrony harmonics. And so I asked him, my question for him was what's that look like when the small world networks snap back into the big one? Because it seemed to me as the smaller new cultures all reach perhaps the same level of logos, the same point at which they catch fire. That's also the pivotal moment at which the major node network, the single node, the mono node, resurfaces in the more efficient pattern than it was before the criticality. And however, what happened was, Catherine asked us to come up and let her know if we had a question and who it was for. And after I went up there and I told her I had a question for John Reiki, that wily Pastor Paul fella who had come out the first night and visited ANACHINO, and so I gave him the heads up that I had this present for Pajot, and then we wanted to confront him on the stage about the Nemesis thing, because frankly I've been giving him shit about it since it happened 2 years ago, before God's dog came out. And so that lovely Pastor Paul fella goes in there, and he tells Catherine, hey, he's got a question. I thought he wanted to talk to Pajot. Now, for Catherine, on her part, she was a solid sort of Discord DM to me to clarify. However, I don't get Discord notifications on my phone, and I missed it. So, as I sat there waiting for my name to be called through the John Verveke questions, which never happened, I realized what was going to occur as Paul came and told me that what he had done. And so I finally, I went up and faced off with Pajot and gave him the gift early. I was going to give it to him at dinner on Saturday, but I gave it to him on stage, and he seemed to appreciate it. And then I clarified that part where he talked about me on Benjamin Boys, saying I'm stylizing myself as the holy fool. And I think it was funny and enjoyable for everyone, and should result in major donations and follows from me. But and so after that delightful thing, it was very, very intense, and I don't know how much of that was the oversleeping or the lack of sleep from ANACHINO. But oh look, that's pretty over there. And and maybe part of it was because we all know that the videos, that the discussions we were missing, that are being recorded and will be released, so we'll be able to catch up and talk about them together like we normally do on our YouTube videos. The Saturday night ANACHINO was truly epic because, like, as people had been asking us throughout the Estuary Chino event, we were like, yeah, come by Saturday night, have a nice time. And they did. And one of the most impressive things to me about the Saturday night ANACHINO was, in a couple of instances, we were able to go even deeper beyond these meaning crisis and what you call it, to like discuss the things that we really, like a few of us, that we really want to discuss, that most people aren't ready to talk about yet. You know, they still feel very, very safe and comfortable, and they don't, or they're you know, have too many responsibilities in their lives for the sort of things we're talking about. But such things include, like, what to do if my channel is no longer appropriate content for YouTube, and those sorts of things. Well, like whether or not we're going to make a commune somewhere so we can all cohabitate with people close to us, or reform a new community. Form a new community of people that aren't just stuck worshiping Saturn, and like maybe are okay with being, like, not falling victim to the weaponized normalization. But so that was exciting. The connections we made, the friendships we made with each other, the all-star cast of Gavin and Mitz, and I mean, there was a lot that weren't there, but I'd say of the sub-channels, if that's what we want to call them, there were probably a good 5 or 6 representatives. I don't know. Those are some preliminary thoughts I've had on the Estuary Chino and ANACHINO event. I'm sure as I go back over the notes and reconnect with the people, I got their contact information, and as our discussions continue, that like some more great bits will probably emerge. But there's one for you now as I make my way back on a really, really long drive. I hope you've enjoyed the scenery and the discussion.